Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Ways and Means Committee. I'm John Quincy, the chair, joined by Councilmember Johnson, Palmisano, and Yang. I'm sure others will be joining us briefly. Oh, Council Vice President Glidden has joined us. We have quite a few items on the agenda today. There are 34 items. One discussion item which we'll be taking up is about the Fridley Filter Plant Rehab Project. Then there are 32 items on our consent agenda, and we'll have a presentation on our 2015 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. So if I could just read through the consent items first and see if there's any questions or if council members would like to pull anything off for further discussion, we're happy to do that. The first item is number 2 on our agenda. It's the surplus property disposal policy and procedure, as well as an amendment to a legal settlement, and that's from the city attorney's office. The city coordinator brings forward an item for a gift acceptance for city staff travel expenses to DC in June of 16. I guess that already happened, so I hope we can accept that gift. Item number 5 is the Minneapolis Telecommunications Network 2014 Annual Audit Report. Number 6 is the contract amendment to the United States Mechanical, Inc. for contract closeouts from the Convention Center. The Finance and Property Services Department brings forward 4 items. The first is a lease for Police Department Command Center at 511 11th Avenue South, a 2016 second quarter gift and donation acceptance, contract amendment with U.S. Bank Elevon to add credit card reader services. This is related to the new land management system. And item number 10 is the City of Minneapolis loan asset policy changes. Item number 11 is from the Information Technology Department. It's a contract amendment with Smart Data Solutions for various data services. There's also a contract amendment for Duncan Parking Technologies for citation system maintenance. Several bids for citywide camera surveillance system maintenance and service. From the Executive Committee, we have the appointed position of Deputy Chief Finance Officer, as well as a collective bargaining agreements with the Plumbers Union, Waterworks Maintenance Unit, and a collective bargaining agreement with International Association of Firefighters Local 82. From Community Development and Regulatory Services Committee, there's just several items here. One is a travel expense donation acceptance through city staff and the Equitable Development Fellowship. We also have a grant from Minnesota Pollution Control Agency for Green Zone Work Group. There's a grant from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation for conservation of Minneapolis bees. Item number 20 is the donation from Hennepin County Medical Center for Skyway Senior Center. Item number 21 is a contract with Pillsbury United Communities and Cultural Wellness Center for community-driven solutions for health. Public Safety and Civil Rights and Emergency Management Committee brings forward the 2016 Urban Scholar Program funding increase, contract with the GSA for Great Lakes region to provide fire and emergency services at B.H. Whipple Federal Building in Fort Snelling, a 2016 Community Partnership Grant from Centerpoint Energy Acceptance, and a grant amendment with the Minnesota Department of Homeland Security for Police Bomb Unit Readiness, a contract amendment with Minneapolis Public Housing for security services. From Transportation and Public Works, we have the West 29th Street Reconstruction Phase 1, contract amendment with Minneapolis Refuge, Inc. for automated vehicle locator telematics and day certain disposal of collected material, an agreement with Dynatest for automated pavement assessment services. We have a storm pump station rehabilitation and upgrade project, Phase 2. Contract amendment with Vortec Hydro for sanitary sewer cleaning, a bid for Northtown Yard water main tunnel renovations, and a bid for 4 fold doors. That's a low responsive bid with Marge Magnuson Construction Company. Are there any questions on those items that council members would like to have answered or pulled for discussion? Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question on item number 7 and on item number 13.
On 13 as well. Let me see what that one is. Very good. Okay. 13 is from the Information Technology. Is there anybody from IT here who can talk to that? We'll see if we can get somebody in on that topic. Are you there for IT as well? Okay, great. So let's talk, let's pull both of those items real quick, or do you want to, do you have quick questions you want to ask and see how it goes, or?
Well, sure,
you
I
want for
could
more
just ask the
discussion?
questions. We don't
Sure,
need
go
to
ahead and start with
vote on
number
them
7.
separately. For item number 7, specific to the $730,000 for the Police Command Center, my question is really around reimbursement for this. And also, it's maybe an ancillary, less than a ways and means question, but I guess I'm just surprised our emergency command center doesn't have capacity for large-scale events. And is that to take it that it's more of a kind of just day-to-day operations up there rather than when something big happens?
Okay. Mr. Ruff, I wonder if you could help us with those topics. I don't know if Mr. Goki is going to be available for some of the
Sure.
Services, but let's see if you can handle that,
Right.
at least on the finance pieces of it.
Right. Mr. Chair, Councilmember Johnson. So Greg Goki, who's the head of property services in the Division of Finance and Property Services, has worked extensively with Commander Gerlacher of the police department in searching sites around the downtown area. There are certain criteria that, as I understand it, and Commander Gerlacher has outlined this, that these types of facilities try to follow. One is proximity to the actual physical space where the events are going to be happening, and so that is one difficulty with the EOC and the OTF. The second is, both of those will also be used for just our traditional and will be on standby during the time of those major events. And so this facility is actually to house the additional personnel, help house the additional personnel that will be coming in from other law enforcement and other emergency responders. And so that's another factor in terms of why we need this space. This already is connected to IT infrastructure. That's also a significant part of making sure that we have all of our cameras that will be able to be routed. And so I think from our perspective, it was looking at what other office space would be available, not necessarily our existing facilities. As I understand it, during the All-Star game, proximity was also important. We were able to use our Royalston facility and able to use more temporary facilities. This is going to take a longer term effort than just that one-day event, and just given the obviously over a 2-year span with both the Super Bowl and the Final Four occurring. I think the other factor, as I understand it, is just the size. Is that facility will need to be able to contain over 70 people, and so the size fit very well with what the parameters were within those agencies. I think certainly if there are major questions, we can defer this item until another cycle, but I will just say that this has been over a year that they have been looking at other alternatives, and this is our best alternative that we can bring forward as well. And certainly Commander Gerlacher can talk more specifically about the police need. On the funding side of it and reimbursement, as the council is aware, we have hired specialized personnel to work directly with the Super Bowl committee as well as the Final Four committee. It's my understanding that the reimbursements will be negotiated by the end of this calendar year, or at the latest in early 2017. That will be done under the guidance of Mr. Cronk and myself in terms of the budget that we have set aside, or we'll talk to the council about. We certainly don't have budget set aside at this current moment, but if I were to put a ranking of priorities in terms of the kind of reimbursements we're going to be seeing from the Super Bowl committee and the Final Four committee, this would be at the top of the list. Following down, maybe toward the bottom of the list, is equipment we might be using for other purposes, and for this purposes, we may have less ability to reimburse 100% of those kind of expenditures. But this is really only being done because of those major events, and so certainly would be very high on the priority list of reimbursements.
I do have a follow-up question related to that then, just to help with my own comfort level on this. For other cities that have hosted the Super Bowl, do they typically get reimbursed for all of the public safety when we go and look at it? I mean, they're not left hanging for that funding costs, are they?
Well, Mr. Chair, Councilmember Johnson, as I mentioned, there is a long list of what could be considered to be reimbursable, but it's my understanding that the core type of public safety costs would be either reimbursed or have an alternative funding source that would not come directly from city, competition with city resources. So there certainly, even in the Ryder Cup that's going to be occurring in a couple of months, the PGA is not directly reimbursing the city and the county for some of their public safety costs, but they worked out an arrangement where they could raise the money in other ways that outside of taxing authority that pay for those costs. So I think that's part of those options we're going to come back to you with toward the end of this year or beginning of early 2017 would be to give you that range of options as the council. It's just the reason we need to move on this particular lease right now is this facility could be released by the owner, and if we waited until another 6 months, we may not have this facility available, and that's unfortunately the reason we want to come in front of you at this moment.
Sure. And so I just want to make clear, because I would feel comfortable in voting for this today if it is the case. So you're saying it is the case that other cities that have hosted the Super Bowl do receive reimbursement for their public safeties. That is a precedent that they've established. So we're confident that, it would be almost a guarantee that we would be reimbursed as well for at least public safety, not necessarily everything on this long list, but our public safety needs, specifically this facility.
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Johnson, that is the plan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember, I know that may have addressed your concerns, but I did notice Commander Gerlicher earlier, and I see Councilmember Bender has another question. Is this on the same topic? Would you like to hear from the commander is what I'm suggesting. Okay. Councilmember Johnson, you still have your tag up. Do you still need more?
Oh, this is just for question 13, so
okay.
I can come back to that.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Bender on number 7.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to clarify the one statement that Mr. Ruff had made about reporting back later this year. So I guess my question is there a time at which we will know the full costs to the city of hosting these 2 events and what we would expect to get reimbursed? Because we are having to sort of approve these expenses as we go along, and we're sort of trusting that we will be reimbursed, but there's a comfort level there of when they start to creep up toward $1 million are sort of, anyway, my own personal comfort level with how many times I'm willing to do that before I understand the full costs to the city versus what we would expect to get back.
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Bender, yes, if it was our preference, we would not be bringing these items to you ahead of that time when we knew all of the resources versus all of the expenditures. But the answer is yes, you will have in front of you a budget. It may be by event rather than combined events, just given the time differential between the two. But we are working hard with the Super Bowl committee to finalize that by the end of this year, or as I said, at the latest, the beginning of 2017, and we will then be able to wrap that into both a probably, the event is occurring in 2018, but certainly there'll be some expenditures that'll occur toward the end of 2017, with the majority of the personnel in 2018. So we will have a plan for you at that time.
And I'm assuming, following up on Councilmember Bender's point, this will be part of the budget process as well. We've already taken some actions already through the coordinators department this year on establishing Mr. Bourne and another person on a contractual basis. Is that included in those?
Commander Gerlicher can speak more to this, but the type of expenditures and estimates of those types of expenditures have been assembled at this time. We are just working through the process with the Super Bowl committee on that, but the mayor is aware of what those are through her budget process, and we will just have to determine how much of that is more the subject of negotiations with the Super Bowl committee before it becomes widely publicized. But certainly there is a list, a very comprehensive list that's been assembled by the police department that's based not just on our past experience, but also visits to the Super Bowl that key staff from the city made this past February. And so we are very informed on what the range of costs are that are out there.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Ruff. Commander Gerlicher, I wondered if you could join us and just clarify a couple of questions Councilmember Johnson had asked earlier, probably when you're on your way here, so you didn't hear them. But it was about the need for that space being, as opposed to the EOTF or even our 9/11 system downstairs, why that space is needed differently. And then I wondered if you could clarify the difference between SEER 1 and SEER 2 and the security needs for these major kinds of events versus other events that happen in a city like ours.
Certainly, Mr. Chair and Councilmember Johnson, other council members. So as far as the facility goes, the scale and scope of something like the Super Bowl is massive, frankly. Probably similar in size and scope to the Republican National Convention dating back a few years. The facility in question offers us some significant advantages because I don't want to get into too much detail, but there's some technology already in place that's going to help us leverage our existing infrastructure. And we've been looking for a site for this for the past year and a half with Property Services, and there's really no other suitable site nearby or in the city that would not be more expensive to try to use. Speaking specifically to the Emergency Operations and Training Facility, that also will be fully activated as our City Emergency Operations Center. We expect to be fully activated for 10 full days, but that facility is not big enough to house all of the emergency management and public safety apparatus for something like the Super Bowl. So you'll have the full capacity up at the EOTF with our Department of Emergency Management coordinating our Emergency Operations Center. This will be the public safety apparatus running incident command from this particular facility with significant state, local, and other partners at that facility. As far as the SEER level 1, 2, 3, the highest SEER level event or special event assessment rating is a SEER level 1. We expect our Super Bowl to be a SEER level 1 event. Every other Super Bowl, with the exception of one, has been a SEER level 1 event. That's determined by the Department of Homeland Security. The only exception to that is the Super Bowl immediately following the September 11th attacks was listed to the next and highest level, which is a national security event. And for example, the Republican National Convention in Cleveland this week is also a national security event. When the Department of Homeland Security makes that designation, Secret Service is ultimately in charge for security. SEER level 1, 2, 3 are all coordinated by the local authorities. By comparison, the All-Star game we hosted in 2014 was a SEER level 3 event, so down the scale quite significantly. So hopefully that answers some of the questions that you had.
It does for me. Are there any other questions for the commander or Mr. Ruff on this item? Not seeing any. Thank you very much, Commander. Councilmember Johnson, you had a question on item 13.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On item number 13, I checked out the RCA and felt that it was pretty brief and didn't have a lot of detail on, is this a system upgrade? Is this actually installing a new surveillance system? What's kind of the history behind it? And just for details, is this effectively just our camera system that's currently up today with all the traffic lights? Is this the private plus public network? What is it about?
Okay. Councilmember Johnson, this is Dave Roth from IT.
Mr. Ruff, before you get into it, when you address the council members' questions, I'll just hold my question until after that. I apologize to interrupt. Go ahead.
This is the internal cameras within the city facilities. It's also all the police cameras. It's also the public works ramp cameras and street cameras. So this is an enterprise agreement that's a break fix. And then also if there's projects above $10,000, then these are the vendors that we can choose from for that project work. So it's all of us work together for this agreement. So.
Great, thank you. That answers my question. I guess my only feedback would be for future RCAs to include some of those details. But I really appreciate you being here to answer the question, and just so we can have more information than not on this when we're looking into it.
Good. It was a good question. Thanks for bringing it up, Councilmember Johnson. I also wanted to highlight what I was interested in is why were there 3 bids at 3 different prices, and why had that been outlined? And in speaking with Mr. Dahl, he assured me of the reasons, and I thought you might want to highlight them as well.
The reason for that is Egan Company was the lowest bid, so they're the primary. If they're too busy, then we can go to the secondary vendor. If they're too busy, we can go to the third vendor. So it gives us flexibility that we don't have to delay when there's emergency needs and special project work where we need to meet certain deadlines.
Right, and that was very important to me because as I was reading it through, and I agree that the RCA could be a little more robust in that definition, but we wanted to be sure to respond within a certain period of time, and just be taking the low bid does not necessarily mean you're going to get the best bid or the one that can do it in the time that you need it, especially on something as important as security cameras. So thanks for being here for that question. Not seeing any other questions. I think we're ready to move on. Were there any other questions on those consent items? I'd like to move the consent agenda. Not seeing any. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed? And those items carry. Great, thank you very much. Let's go to our first item, which is the presentation on the city's CAFR. Ms. Griffith, if you could join us.
Members of the committee, Chair Quincy, members of the committee. My name is Connie Griffith. I'm the controller for the city of Minneapolis in the Finance and Public Services or Property Services Department. The CAFR, the 2015 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report was just issued. It's been issued in a lot of different forms, and we thought it would be a good time, since this is the first time in about 4 years we've actually presented on it. In presenting today, we are presenting on the CAFR itself, and tomorrow there will be a presentation on the state auditor's report on the CAFR and the single audit report by the state auditor's office. So the CAFR was attached to the agenda. So you all have a copy online. We have this nice printed copy that if you would like a copy of it, please let us know. And it's nice because it has tabs and things like that to kind of organize it a little bit. We also have it on the Finance and Property Services Department webpage. You can link to it there. And there is a link on the OpenGov page or OpenGov site also. So you have a lot of places where it can be accessed. It can be accessed not only by you, but by the public as well. The purpose of presenting on the CAFR is to give you an introduction probably as to what information is in the CAFR, where to find what you might be looking for, what things might be of key interest to everyone, and also to help provide a little bit of an understanding of why the CAFR is an important document. What does it provide as far as you as the leaders of the city, as well as those who are investing or wanting to know more about the city and how it uses its funds, like the public and the citizens here. The CAFR is a large document. This one happens to have 171 pages of a lot of important information. And so to help you kind of guide through that 171 pages, this is what we're trying to provide today, is a little bit of a synopsis and summary of what's in the CAFR. It has, it's like the, like a public or private sector's annual report is what the CAFR does. It provides a combination of all of the funds that we have in the city. It provides an opportunity to look at the financials on an entity-wide basis rather than by fund or by category of fund. And it gives you an opportunity to see all of the assets and liabilities of the city, as well as all of the revenues and expenses in one place. And it's broken down into what we call governmental, which is the general fund, and the special revenue funds and all of the internal service funds are actually considered governmental, and the business-like activities which are the enterprise funds. And we prepare this on a GAAP basis. So it's the only financial reporting that we do to you that is on a GAAP basis, because there are a number of things we have to do at year end for reporting purposes only that are adjustments we make and things that we report on that we don't otherwise report on to you. And then finally, it is an audited report, which during the year when we present on the quarterly reports and that type of, the information is based on the same system and the same information that we get goes into the CAFR, but it is audited by the state auditor's office. This year, as we have every year in the past, we received an unmodified opinion, which is the best opinion you can get and the cleanest opinion. We have been awarded the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting by the GFOA. We think it's 46 years, but there may be a few years dropped in there, and we expect to receive it next year as well for the 2015 report. I think the important part here, and this is something that we like to make sure you understand, is it's a very valuable report, and if you take the time to look at it a little bit, you'll find out a lot about the city that you might not otherwise know. So it's used for reporting on the financial condition to the city's executive management council, which is obviously you. It's used to inform our constituency and the public. And because it is a little bit convoluted and a lot of information in one place, a lot of times it helps to use something like OpenGov to provide some more transparency and a little, to provide it in sort of a picture format. And then finally, it's used to inform those who invest in the city. And this includes the bondholders and the bond rating agencies and the SEC. And this is really important because the bond rating agencies look at this in detail. And we are anticipating issuing bonds in the future. And this is something that they ask a lot of questions about and a lot of detailed questions. It is also used by federal, state, and county funding agencies for grants and that type of thing, and also by regulatory bodies. So it's a very important document. The introduction, or the CAFR itself, has 3 sections. There's the introductory section. It has the transmittal letter, the organization chart, and the certificate of achievement. And the organization chart is based on 2015, not where we are currently. We've had lots of changes. The financial section includes the independent auditor's report, which is very important. The management's discussion and analysis, which is something I'll highlight a little bit about because that's an area that provides a summary of information and would be a summary in 26 pages, but a summary nevertheless. And required the fund financial statements and the notes to the financial statements are in the basic financial statements. So that's where we actually present the financial statements as combined plus the major financial statements for individual funds. And then we have required supplementary information and other supplementary information in this particular section. And then finally, the statistical section. And the statistical section provides a lot of information on our debt, demographics, a lot of detailed information that would be interesting, in particular if you have some interest in the details on those things. The transmittal letter is on pages IV through VIII, so 4 through 8, and is just an introduction to the CAFR and is merely saying, here is the CAFR for you to read. We have put this together. There's some sort of stewardship information in there. Talks about the awards we've received, that type of thing. There's a little bit of demographic general discussion in that, but most of that should be is just to cover the letter, to transmit the CAFR, I'm sorry, to those who are reading it and that type of thing. The next section, which I think is the most important section for those who are just reading and the readers of the CAFR, is management's discussion and analysis. It's like an executive summary of the CAFR, and it's objective, it's readable, it provides a lot of information, but in a way that is understandable. And I think if anybody who is a reader is looking at it, they should be able to understand where the city is at. It needs to be read in conjunction with the transmittal letter and the notes to the financials, as well as the financial statements in the basic financial statements, because they all are related, and details provided in the notes in the financial statements to the management's discussion and analysis. It has the financial highlights with a general overview of the financial statements. But what's really interesting here is it is the only place in the whole of the CAFR that provides comparative information from this year to last year. And it's in summary format, but there's a number of notes and that type of thing, and a description of why things have occurred from year to year. And it is really helpful because it gives you an idea of how we are progressing. And then there's it ends with summary information, including some information on economic factors. But again, most of that is available in with the notes, and a fairly long discussion actually on the long-term financial planning and the economic factors. The basic financial statements are the ones that have changed over the years. In 2003, we implemented what we call GASB 34, which provided for a means of creating government-wide financial statements that combine everything. And in these government-wide financial statements, all the interfund transactions and things, including the transactions with the internal service funds, are eliminated. So it's like a private sector report in which we have a lot of subsidiary activity, and all of the subsidiaries are combined at year end. All the interfund transactions or inter subsidiary transactions are eliminated, and you have what we call a consolidated or combined financial report. We present this financial report in two parts. There's the therefore two areas: the governmental funds and the or governmental activity of the city, and also the business-like activity of the city. And so what we end up having is the consolidated financial statements, which includes a statement of net position, and which is like the balance sheet, and a statement of changes in net position, which is like the income statement. And so what we have is it's all on a full accrual basis of accounting, which if you look at the individual funds, they are not. And it includes all of the assets and liabilities, capital assets, infrastructure, and long-term debt of all the funds. At this point in time, if you look at individual funds in the governmental fund area, you do not see any long-term activity, any long-term debt, any capital assets, any long-term liabilities, or those types of things. And so it's really important that we have a way of showing that in these statements. And what we end up doing is following GASB's requirements. Then we come up with financial statements that are consistent and comparable to other statements of other local governments. It provides for operational accountability as well as fiscal accountability. And as I indicated below, there are two statements that are very important: the statement of net position, the statement of activities, which again are like the balance sheet and income statement of old. The reporting structure on the government-wide basis includes the primary government, and this is another part that's real important. The primary government, of course, is the city itself, and again, the governmental activities and the business type activities. But what also gets included in this financial statement is what we call our component units. The component units are legally separate entities that either provide services almost entirely to the city, like the BET, the Board of Estimate and Taxation. So it's blended in, it's just as if it's another department within the city. or it's the city is financially accountable to the city and the city is able to impose its will on the organization. So these are discreetly presented, and these include the Park and Recreation Board, the Municipal Building Commission, Meet Minneapolis, and a new one this year is the Minneapolis Telecommunications Network. So all of those are incorporated into the component units, and at some point you will find that you can see separate financial statements for each of them. The statement of net position is something that we don't ever talk about much during the year. We don't ever talk about the balance sheet, as I call it, for the financial reporting during the year, because during the year, important to us is the budget versus actual. So we look at revenues and expenses and compare it to budget, and that's the majority of our reporting during the fiscal year. But what's really important is to look at all of our activities and assets and liabilities periodically, and I have asked that my accounting staff, in preparing the financial reports during the financial reporting on a quarterly basis, that we do include important things like cash balances and that type of thing in our presentations, and a fund balance or net position. So at this point in time, this is where we again incorporate into this report all of our assets and liabilities, including our infrastructure. So during the year, you would not find in the general fund or any of the funds that pay for this, the capital projects fund, a lot of information on the actual costs of the infrastructure that we're building, like the streets, the bridges, those types of things. So what we end up showing in these financial statements is that information, and I will show that in just a minute. In this case, in the net position, the total assets of the city exceeded the total liabilities at the close of 2015 by $1.882 billion. However, and we divide these into capital assets, or net capital assets, the restricted assets, and then unrestricted assets. And what happens on the governmental funds is that the unrestricted assets this year, net position this year, I shouldn't say assets, net position this year was $67.8 million in the negative. And that is due primarily to the governmental funds. It is due to the implementation for reporting purposes only of GASB 68 and 71, which required that the city, along with all other governmental units in the country, report their share of the unfunded liability in the pension funds that they participate in, as well in our case as a teacher's retirement pension plan, since we are statutorily required to pay for that at this point in time. So if you look at the statement of net position, which I'm going to have to look at, we start getting pretty tiny on my notes, but the statement of net position, if you look down at the bottom, it shows in the governmental activities that we have a total net position of $990,426,000, but our unrestricted net position is $146,805,000 in the red. And that doesn't mean that we are going to all of a sudden incur some kind of loss that we're going to have to be without any funding or anything. We are not paying for this liability. We are merely recording it and reporting on it because we are required to do that. It is a long-term liability. It is not expected to come due for many, many, many years. And over time, it will change what we have. Because we implemented GASB 68 and 71, we had to restate the beginning fund balance. So at the end of last year, our net position, I keep using the term fund balance, that's what we used to call it. So net position was $1,278,000,000. million. And that has had to be restated. And what we actually incurred in at the beginning of the year was $316.6 million in long-term liability that we needed to record for the prior years, and then added to that the $146.8 million for this year. So you end up having almost quite a bit over $400 million that was primarily in the general fund that we had to record, and as a result of that, ended up with a negative unrestricted net position. We also had GASB 68 and 71 transactions on the business type activities. However, their fund balances were such that the amount of adjustment, both for beginning net position, the restatement of 28 million was, and what the activity they had during the year was absorbed by their fund balance, and so does not reflect as unrestricted or a negative unrestricted amount on their fund balance.
Okay.
So,
Ms. Griffith, we're coming up on the
Okay.
15-minute gap here.
Sorry.
So can you do the
I'll
highlights?
be finished in two more minutes. The statement of activities is our statement of essentially like an income statement. It has our revenues and expenses, and it's kind of in a different format, but it shows, especially on the governmental side, is what our program revenues are, less our program expenses. And what is an interesting item here is that we're able to see what additional costs, especially in the governmental activities, is covered by tax revenue, the general tax revenue, and transfers. And if you look at the sheets there, what we're showing is $490 million that has to be covered by general revenues, which is primarily property tax, which is almost 60% of that. And then franchise fees, local taxes, the LGA, and transfers. And the transfers come from the business type activities. And you can see that $14 million is primarily transfers to the governmental side. So we have our fund financial statements and our notes to the financial statements, which have additional detailed information. The funds financial statements are primarily the major funds shown individually, and then, of course, the general fund is always a major fund, and then there some other major funds based on their assets, liabilities, and revenues, expenses. Finally, we have the other financial section, and the other financial section provides accounting and budgetary information that includes and is used to support and supplement the financial statements, the notes, and the MD&A. One of the things that's in there that I think is really important is the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. That is on, and I think it's buried in there, but it's on page 141, and that has all of our grant expenditures from the federal government. And then we have our statistical section and highlights. The statistical section, I think the part that's really important is we have our financial trends, our revenue capacity, our debt capacity, our demographic and economic information, and other operational information. And it's really a great place to go and look and just look statistically at where we're at in some areas and what you want to know about the city, I think, a little bit. We had a couple things that I wanted to add was the Office of the State Auditors has separately issued an audit of the city's general agency reserve fund system, which is the common bond fund. It is incorporated in our financials under CPED enterprise funds, but it does have its own financial statement issued and audited because it also issues bonds. And then we have the auditors report tomorrow, their management and compliance report, which will talk about both the CAFR and the uniform grant guidance and the schedule of findings and question costs related to the single audit. That's a lot of information to try and summarize, and I apologize for taking so long.
No, it is totally good. If there's any questions, I do see one from Councilmember Yang. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Griffith, I would love to have a copy.
Okay.
And I don't know about my other colleagues, but I mean, I certainly would love to
Yeah.
take a look at it.
It's a little easier to look at it as much as we like it online to look at it and we'll be sure and get copies to all of you. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a tremendous body of work that you do annually, so it was important because we haven't talked about this in quite a while, so help understand it, especially as we're about to launch into the budget season. It's important to understand where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. So thank you.
I do want to just add to this that there are a lot of people that participate in this and do the work that it takes to get this produced. And there are probably over 100 people just in finance alone, along with the state auditor's office, who have to put all of this information together and put it in the right format and make sure that it gets audited and is correct.
Good.
And that includes finance as well as some of the other departments and their financial people. So I appreciate that.
Yes, thank you very much for acknowledging that. Good. Go to our discussion. That's a receive and file item, and just for purposes. All those in favor of receiving and filing the report from Controller's Office, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. Moving into the discussion item, which is from the Transportation and Public Works Committee, and it's certainly not very often that I would take something from another committee to highlight and talk about, but this is a big deal. And so Councilmember Reich and I made sure that we highlighted the financial components of that in this meeting. So we welcome you to come and talk about the Fridley Filter Plant Rehab Project.
Chair Quincy, committee members, I'm Glenn Garrett. I'm the Director of Water Treatment Distribution Services, also known as Minneapolis Waterworks. Here to talk about the Fridley Filter Plant Rehabilitation. It's always hard to follow a CAFR discussion, but I'll do my best.
Yeah. You're spending $44 million. She was showing me how we had 1.8 left. What do you got?
I've got a lot of nice pictures.
All right.
This is actually the Fridley Filter Plant as it exists today. It was built back in the 1920s. It was actually built after the Columbia Heights filter plant that was built in the mid 1913 to 1918. Interesting enough, both these plants alone were considered conventional treatment and were the entire treatment scheme for the city of Minneapolis at the time. They are standalone, and they were augmented when the softening plant was built back in the 1940s. This is the inside of that beautiful building, and it actually has 20 filters in there, 10 in what we call the North Gallery and 10 in the South Gallery. And it is the workhorse of our system. This plant can filter up to 140 million gallons of drinking water per day. That was the operating deck that I just showed you. This is the area below those filters. This is what we commonly refer to as the pipe gallery. This allows the movement of water through the filter, but then it also allows us to reverse water up back through the filters when we need to clean them. So again, a little history of this plant. It was constructed in 1925, expanded in 1927. In the late 60s, we did do a rehab of this plant, but we only did the filters, the actual filter boxes themselves. We replaced the guts of the filter, if you will, as well as the media at that time, and did the other half in the late 70s. The media used at that time was actually a combination of sand and anthracite coal. More recent history. As you know, back in the mid-2000s, there was a project that was canceled that was going to turn this into a membrane filtration plant. There were some new studies that started around 2010. And at that point, one of the first things we realized that we needed to do was something called a redundancy improvement project. The reason for that project is that even though Fridley Filter was capable of 140 million gallons a day, it was all or nothing. If that plant had to go offline, you lost 140 million gallons of capacity. Columbia Heights has 70 million, but if you lost 140, especially during the summer months, that could be a real issue. So what the redundancy project basically did is took the existing Fridley filter plant and broke it into 2 filter plants, a north and a south. So at any given time, we have 3 70 million gallon filtering plants, 2 at Fridley, 1 at Columbia Heights. And then we have 140 million of softening. So we have that true extra filtering capacity. So if we have to take a filtering, 70 million gallons of filtering offline, we still can produce those summer demands. And that was real important in this project because otherwise it would have been virtually impossible to do that without putting huge restrictions on the community for the period of time that this construction was going to be taking place. We've been looking at the design of this plant for quite some time, and the bid that you see in front of you is a result of all that work and determining what we really should do in terms of getting that plant up to today's standards. So just a project at a glance. What we're doing is we're reconstructing the filters on top. That's totally gutting the filters, and we're moving to something called GAC or GAC. It's granular activated carbon, and one of the things that GAC does for us, it's a real good media for taste and odor control, where the membrane plant up in Columbia Heights really doesn't do anything for taste and odor. The GAC at the Fridley filter plant will be a welcome addition to our tool chest for working taste and odor. The other thing about GAC is it also offers us another treatment tool, if you will, with respect to contaminants of emerging concern, things like pharmaceuticals, algae toxins. A lot of times GAC is a technology that's a lot of times cited to deal with those things. And even though we don't have those issues today, it's always good to be prepared to deal with things like that. Interesting enough, this is a fun little fact that if you take the mass of a paper clip of granular activated carbon, it actually has a surface area of a tennis court. And that's kind of the power of the media, is that it's got this huge surface area to basically have contaminants, absorb onto that media. In addition to the GAC, we're going to remove all those pipes that I showed you in the bottom of the filter gallery. Those are original. They just need to be updated. The valves need to be updated. We're adding a new backwash supply system. And actually, if you drive by the Fridley campus, you'll see that we have a water tower that's coming up out of the ground. Right now, it's about 40 feet in the air. It'll be the first water tower in Minneapolis in decades. That water is basically used to provide the water when we backwash the filters. The existing capacity of the backwash is not adequate by today's standards to wash filters, so we're adding that capacity to 500,000 gallon tank. Of course, if you're going to wash with that much water, you also have to have a place to put it. So we have to have a recovery system as big to deal with that volume as well. Funding sources. We're looking at both general obligation and we were hoping to take advantage of the state revolving fund drinking water, which was a little bit tenuous given the lack of a bonding bill so far. We still feel confident that we'll be able to tap into some of that state revolving fund money at a very low interest rate. Also, the Performa, as it's been submitted last year already, had the rates, a rate structure that supported this expenditure. Our rates are no higher than 4% and continually going down in the future. And with that, this is my question slide. So nothing to really speak to here, but I will open it up to any questions that anybody might have.
Good. Well, thank you very much for that. Especially with all the conversation about water safety in this country and in other municipalities, I'm just always pleased to highlight what's happening in Minneapolis, how we're treating it, how we're thinking about it, and how we're preparing for that. So that's why I wanted to bring this forward and have a little conversation today. Going back to your slide previously on the financing, which is what this committee is most interested in.
Right.
Just wanted to make sure people knew that it was anticipated for a long time. We've been working on this for an awfully long time. I know when I first came on the first term, it was one of the big settlements and decisions of going to one of those membrane systems, going to this carbon activated system.
Right.
So been long considered, and all of the financing for this is within the enterprise funds that will be able to pay off the bonds, which we're able to borrow at an incredibly low rate. So from a fiscal perspective, this is a good common sense step to take for a long-term implementation and effect that we can easily afford, and it's an action we should take as fast as we can. So thank you very much for that presentation. Not seeing any other questions on that. This is an action item, so we just need to move approval of the request from staff. All those in approval, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed? That item carries, and that exhausts our agenda for the day, and we are adjourned.